Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is yet again another Monday, and you know, not in keeping with recent shows. I've decided just to go 100% sports now. There's enough movement, I think, in the sports right now that it warrants a full program, and I think everyone's sick of the other, to be honest. I know that I am. So I'm putting up on Twitter right now, and I'm also going to put, well, if I can hit the right button, I'm going to go ahead into and get the link for bing, 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 bing. All right. And I'll put that in. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Not bad.
That's it.
Another warm day in the desert.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. It's really nice to,
Got the 85
up here in Bellevue. It was hotter than a hooker's hiney.
Yeah.
Traditionally, Memorial Day is one of the least listened to programs, just because.
You might hear my air conditioning fire up in the background here.
Yeah, mine's running too.
It's been raining here all day. It's raining like crazy. So I think Jeff Lynne said that it's raining all over the world. Yeah, that's right. Tonight, the longest night. I wanted to start out the program with an interesting thing. And, everybody's entitled to an opinion in the world of sports. And Reggie Bush, former player, says that paying college athletes will destroy some people. Now, he doesn't name what people it will destroy, but...
Says the guy who had to give back his fucking Heisman because he got paid under the table.
Yeah, I mean...
Didn't his parents get compensated or something?
Yeah, the university bought him a house, or boosters bought the family a house.
But saying that he said that paying college athletes who don't have the proper guidance is going to destroy some people. Now, here's the deal. And I have a very strong point of view in this, and maybe you all have a different perspective than I do. That's true with a lot of things. I mean, that would be like saying if you put a gun in the hand of the wrong person, you have a murderer. All right. Or it would be like saying that any self-destructive thing, give one guy a drink, he's a social drinker, give another guy a drink, he becomes an alcoholic and he dies in a tragic car wreck. I mean, there are going to be more than one instances when you pay college athletes about kids who are coming out of a non-privileged background, who do not have economic advisors. They have friends who will exploit them and they won't know what to do with their money. But is that a reason to continue to not compensate them? Rick?
Now, how much money does he think that they're going to get?
Well, I mean, I guess you never really know. I mean, think Zion Williamson, all right? I mean, you got to remember that these people are coming out of college now or high school now, bigger names than a lot of guys who played in the league for a couple of years, because there's always a watch on for the next great one. So there's going to be a lot of publicity. And let's be honest about this. I mean, if you have a guy writing a book and a publishing house or whatever wants to publish his book, there will be a bidding war. And it's the same thing that happens in Hollywood for scripts. You get a guy who writes a really wicked script and, that script's floating around and directors are going to bid and studios are going to bid on that. And it's going to move things up. I mean, I don't think that it's a good enough reason to prevent people from, he's arguing that they shouldn't be compensated for their name and likeness. I mean, this goes I mean, right down the line, this guy feels no, they have no rights whatsoever. So I take it.
Well, but
Rick,
I think you could. Really think that you could break this out as Division I, Division II, Division III, and then I would say that the junior college level probably wouldn't get anything, but that with the amount of money that the football teams, for instance, generate, it pays for all the other athletic programs. It pays for the swim team. It pays for the water polo team. It pays for, the women's sports.
All right. Now, the heart of this, the NCAA's Board of Governors announced just last month that it supports a proposal to allow college athletes to sign endorsement contracts and receive payment for other work, provided that the schools they attend are not involved in any of the payments. Right. And what Reggie Bush had to say is, guidance is the one thing that young athletes coming through the college system miss on so much. I missed on it. They're about to start paying college athletes. This is something that has never been experienced, and it's going to destroy some people if their foundation is not in the right place.
Is anyone suggesting like some sort of a financial advisor to, maybe provide information and advice to the,
the
pertinent
NCAA
question?
could do that. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, they roll in almost as much money as the NFL. Do people understand that?
It's a big money maker, but you want to know the funny thing about it? At every level of sports, whether it's the rooks in football or the rooks in basketball, they all get what's called the speech. And the speech is, the speech, Tony. I mean, the speech, they make fun of it. They fall asleep during it. That's like, you got to be careful how you handle your money. You got to be careful who approaches you, and invariably they fuck up anyway, because they're young and they don't want to listen to that. So I'm not sure that a financial advisor is necessarily the answer, because financial advisors will flock to people's sides, and it will become people like Saul Zaentz, the guy who stole all of John Fogerty's songs, or it's going to be like the guy who stole all of Billy Joel's publishing rights. I mean, there will be lots of investor people or people who are financial advisors.
I guess we finally know who the stranger is, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think you almost have to give these guys accountants, but then you're looking at, is the accountant going to scam from the player?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Have the player major in finance.
Well, here again, they could put for the endorsement deals. It could be like the rookie contracts within the NFL, where there's a hard cap on how much money they can actually earn.
Well,
and I'm going to ask Rox now. Do you think that it's a good enough reason, Rox, to say to somebody, we haven't been paying you for decades and decades, but we're going to start giving you that opportunity? And a guy who basically lost the highest honor in college football because of payoffs back when is now going to stand in the way of those people. I mean, can you prevent people from making mistakes just by keeping them down and not making decisions?
His point of view makes no sense. It's almost like, I wasn't entitled to that, so why should anyone else be entitled to that? I mean, it makes perfect sense to pay people for their likenesses. I mean, that was just kind of an abuse of power all this time. So no, it makes no sense for someone to try to stand in the way of that, to do the right thing.
Yeah. Now, second time in a week. Today is Rox's birthday.
Hey.
No. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Oh, but you see, they don't sing for you. They don't sing for you. They no, but I'm going to.
Happy birthday
to
you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr.
Dear Roxanne.
Happy birthday to you.
Yay,
Uh,
thank you.
And I'll tell you, does she not look great for 60? My God.
Holding up well. Rox,
What do you
your thoughts?
say about your skin, Rox?
Black don't crack.
Okay. Sounds like something Joe Biden would say. I don't know.
No, that's a
I
rhyme.
broke
I'm not
my
sticking to
rule.
that.
I broke my own rule. I should not. I'm gonna get away from that. But I just thought that I had made such a big deal about college athletes not getting paid for so long that the guy who would stand up and talk out about it was the two-time All-American running back at USC when they won back-to-back national titles back in beginning of the decade. It was early 2000s.
Well, I can think of 2 Ohio State players that got burned by this in Terrell Pryor and the running back.
Mo Claret.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. They both could have survived easily if they were getting their cash. Nobody would have had to lie about anything.
Yeah, I mean, listen to what Reggie Bush is saying. In an interview in Playboy, he said, "Show me that coochie. Show me that
Before his magazine was closed.
Nice tits, bitch.
Oh, nice, Tony. There's a lady here. It's her birthday. That's name calling.
Not like she hasn't heard it before.
Oh,
Well, damn.
This-
And that's just since last night.
I mean the vulgarity not being called a.
Word.
Oh, God.
Dislikes war and ill-fitting clothes.
I mean, first I get called 60 years old, and now this. What the
Yeah.
hell?
I know.
Gotta earn that co-host job, huh?
Sheesh.
I know. There are worse things than being a 60-year. Forget it. He told Playboy that athletes, specifically well-paid athletes, are an open target and cited widespread financial uncertainty caused by the coronavirus pandemic, saying our market is crashing. The one thing I wish I had early in my career is proper financial knowledge. I hired good agents, I hired a good team, but I allowed that good team to make decisions for me. I'm not saying I'm going bankrupt, but if I had the proper knowledge back then, some things would be different. Well, everybody says the same thing, but the fact of the matter is, any of these players, let's say that they hire basically honest people who don't necessarily make the wisest investments, but they're still way up financially compared to not being compensated at all. I still can't figure out what the defense of this is, except to say it's a bad world out there and people are going to hurt you. And so we're going to make sure we just never pay you so people won't prey on you. Well, the second that they become stars in the NFL, they're going to be preyed upon. I mean, there are countless examples of all kinds of chicanery, getting people bilking athletes into bad investments. I mean, it was just a never-ending thing.
I just wonder if you start playing it, how do you do like a set salary across the board? I mean,
Well, that's
Then-
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You could pay the football team like $20,000 a player.
because then you get into the types of like what's going on with U.S. soccer now, where the women think they should be paid more than the men's team when it comes out in court that they actually are being paid more than the men's team, but narrative and all this other shit. And where do you draw a line with, okay, you get 20,000 per player, you get 10,000 per player. Oh, but you're a woman, you get 15,000 per player. Oh,
Well,
you're a
the
man, you get more.
implication is with an endorsement, I mean, the athlete is negotiating for payments. This is not coming from the NCAA. I mean, it's the open market. I mean, let's say,
lest we forget that Northwestern, I think, was one of the first teams to petition the courts to to have their own players union.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy like Zion Williamson, I mean, theoretically could cut a deal for shoes while he's still in high school. I mean, and that has nothing to do with the set payment. That's just negotiating, and hopefully somebody would be smart enough, but the problem is parents want to handle this and they're not equipped. And, a lot of bad things can come of it, but I'll be honest with you, playing football, a lot of bad things can happen. I mean, from a health perspective for that. And in basketball, I mean, let's be honest, we're not really talking about that many people. It's 2 fucking rounds of draft where the second round doesn't even matter.
No.
A lot of these kids coming out of high school, I mean, they've been eclipsed by the European guys coming over, the Luka Doncic's and the people like that.
Yeah, but see, in the European model, the 50 you can be turned pro at like 15 or 16.
16, yeah.
In a lot of these countries, so it doesn't. You're already. By the time you finish high school, you've already basically earned your first contract. Or played through your first contract.
Oh yeah, I mean, Jetty Osman was in Turkey forever,
and it's not just and that doesn't just apply to basketball. It's also soccer is that way too.
Right.
Yeah. Birthday girl, you're now the co-host of the program. So if anyone tries to knock to get into the studio, you can,
Or once we keep commenting, she could just kick us off the show.
Yeah, you can let your fingers do the watching. You better look out about that.
He's in charge of the trap doors now.
The name calling. I've just given her the authority. The authority to
Thanks, Cartman.
It's so funny. Before football even starts, and all the talk is Joe Burrow and how Joe Burrow is going to be, and Tua Taglio Ravioli or whatever.
Bag of ravioli.
Yeah. Is he going to be as good as? Yeah. Is he going to be as good as Dan Marino and all of this talk? And I remember just a matter of 2 years ago that, the same talk was surrounding Baker Mayfield. And after 1 year, Baker Mayfield has a really good season, brings the team along. And then last year, now he's ready for the scrap heap. And they got people saying that, I'm actually reading national sources that are saying deep down, the Browns really aren't worried about Baker Mayfield because they have a backup quarterback who's every bit as good. And I'm like, wow.
You know what? No.
Within the Stefanski system, I would say that's probably true because that's when Case Keenum had his very best season was with Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah.
Now, Case Keenum is not Baker Mayfield. And I feel great that we have somebody who's capable of starting if Baker goes down and gets hurt. But, how quarterbacks are upvalued and devalued before they've even taken a snap, or based on 1 year where everybody on the Browns their productivity seemed to have gone to hell in a handbasket. And, I really believe that Baker Mayfield is in the best possible place he can be. I think that Freddie Kitchens wanted him to be Darryl LaMonica. I think he wanted him to be the Mad Bomber. And that's not, Baker Mayfield can heave a long throw, yes. But if you remember coming out of college, I always like to go back and say, you remember the way this was back when. The biggest thing that we liked about Baker Mayfield was accuracy. And that went to hell in a handbasket last year with wide receivers who were injured when the season started and never got healthy, with a system that made no sense, with no balance between the running game and the passing game. and an offensive line that leaked like a sieve. And so you end up with a guy like Baker Mayfield in his second year and the ball sailing all over the place.
Oh, well,
But
they ran the air raid offense with two of the best fucking running backs in the entire league.
I know. I mean, the whole thing didn't make sense. And, if Baker Mayfield will get the ball into the hands of the right person if he understands the offense. Nobody understood the offense last year. Freddie Kitchens didn't understand it. Nobody did. But I'm convinced that if you give Baker Mayfield the ability to use his running game consistently, because I think predicated on the first 2 years that Nick Chubb is the best young running back in the AFC. I believe that. I think considering who he played for, it's all the more remarkable what he's accomplished. And I think that if he were used properly, because he's a strong guy and can get stronger as the game goes on, he could really wear down some defenses. If you give him a guy like Austin Hooper, who is a guy that he can always find on the field without having to worry about who's streaking down the left sideline of his, OBJ, or, who's streaking down over the middle, which is Jarvis Landry. If you give him a logical dump off, if he feels pressure, he can put a ball on the dime. I mean, I don't understand why people are so down right now when it would appear that he is in a system that he needs to be in. So, I mean, we'll start with Brian on this. I mean, you worried about Baker Mayfield? Do you think he's going to benefit or he's going to
he should
regress?
he should massively benefit, because if you, like you said, if you go back to Oklahoma, his tight end was primarily Mark Andrews through the best part of his last 2 years playing at Oklahoma. So having a tight end, bringing in a tight end like Hooper, of course you're going to have, you should have a much better shot at number one, completing over the middle passes. And he was really good at when in 2018, he was really good in the 15 to 25 yard throws. So if you keep him in that kind of rectangle on the field, that's where he can do the most damage. That's where he's the most effective. If he has to wait for people to run 25, 40 yard patterns, and he's getting run down on by defensive ends and having to run for his life and make all these weird throws and try to throw to a check down in full windup. No, we saw what happens then.
Yeah. Well, somebody's trying to get into the studio, but I can't grant access without knowing pay me, which is kind of funny under the circumstances. But if you
It
want
might be Johnny Manziel.
Yeah,
Small Just find the tens, please.
Yeah, if
I think it's Bronk.
Yeah, you never know.
Oh,
It's got to be.
check.
Yeah, is it spelled PAIMEI? Like
MOUSE.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Can
probably
anybody prove this person if it's not Brock?
Moo.
that's Brock.
Yep. Honorable. Hey, me.
Oh, you guys know the reference. It's the monk from Kill Bill 2.
It might be Jimmy Haslam expecting his
Pai Mei.
rebate checks from his minorities
Dak
report.
Prescott talking to Jerry.
Well, it could be that too. So,
Tony the Calf, do you think you're a Stefanski guy? I mean, do you think that he's going to benefit? And why are people suggesting that he might regress even more?
I just think it's Cleveland. mentality thinking he'll regress, regress more. Stefanski, to clarify, Pat Shurmur was the offensive coordinator in 2017 when Keenum had his big year, not Stefanski, but Stefanski's an understudy of Pat Shurmur. And that team,
scary thought, isn't it?
Yeah, but I thought Stefanski was the quarterback's coach.
He was the quarterback's coach under Pat Shurmur.
So.
Yes. So Pat Shurmur is actually a pretty good offensive coordinator. It's once you give him the reins of the entire team is where where it dives off the cliff.
Panic.
But that team had a lot of checkdowns. You know, the running backs were catching the balls, which is great for Kareem Hunt. You know, Dalvin Cook was able to run the ball, and he had 2 awesome tight ends, and Thielen, who was an under wide receiver at the time, who would run crossing routes and slants and would get you 5-10 yards. And then you had Diggs for the big plays. So I think if you can get somewhat of a offensive line that will give Baker Mayfield time, which they spent a lot of money on this year, I think the Browns are going to be right up there.
Well, I have a feeling that, you know, he should get better protection, but in the event that he doesn't, he's going to have an option. There was no option for him except to roll out right. And everybody was pissed off that he kept rolling out right, but there was no way he was going to stay in the pocket with those idiots in front of him and last the season or even last 8 games of the season. And he knew that. So it became more of a survival thing that it's not what he does best. I like the idea of Baker Mayfield throwing to a running back and to a Kareem Hunt in stride. It gives an opportunity to make small plays into bigger plays rather than having to rely on bigger plays every time. How you feeling, Bronk?
Here, man. Here. What's the question today or now?
The question right now is, do you feel that the move to Stefanski's offense is going to hinder Baker Mayfield? Some national pundits are saying that he's just going to continue to regress, or do you think it will be beneficial for him?
Who are these idiot national pundits who think he's going to regress? If we have a running game like we had when we had Kevin Mack and Ernest Biner, we've now got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, who are at least as good as Mack and Biner as far as athletically and probably technically too. And now we have tight ends that can play like Hooper and maybe Joku will figure out where his head's at. And we have an intelligent adult coach who seems to know how to call plays. So isn't that, well, Steven's eating food. That's a shocker. Anyway, so how is he going to regress? I mean, what's the mechanism that's going to make him regress? We've improved the offensive line. So the offensive line is better. The running backs will get better. The tight ends are better. And the pass receivers aren't hurt like they were all fucking last year. So I'm looking for Nick Chubb to be either the number 1 or number 2 running back in the entire league this year. And I'm looking for Hooper to have maybe 70 or 80 catches. And I'm looking for Landry and Beckham to finally get some touchdown catches. So I think it's going to be a fucking great offense.
Oh, I love it. That is just so awesome. I'm just playing around with Steven. You can go ahead. You can go ahead and put your video back up, Steven. You were just grossing us all out. Yeah,
it's hard to. I still managed to have my rant while you were showing the meeting, which was.
I was fucking distracted trying to.
Yeah, I can repeat it again if you want, but it's not that big of a deal.
No, I mean, to me, it's goofy that people would even.
Steven's happy to help. You can see from his little key ring there, so he's gonna get involved in the match.
He's in deep thought right now.
Just stay away.
I'm not sure which.
Stay away from his mouth, man. That's
Is that Texas Longhorn hat he's got on? It's burnt orange. Houston Astros. It's burnt orange.
It got to be Houston Astros.
Yeah.
It's that color of orange.
Yeah.
I like the old school.
Same color as University of Texas too. It's burnt orange.
Is that the one with the sound equipment built in?
No, that's the one with the beer bong on either side. You just got them taken off, you know. With the,
I like the old school '96 one, the one where it's blue with the white yellow star on it, and it's like looks like it's like a
Trash can.
Yeah.
I like the old school '69 one. That's, you know.
So does Rocks.
45.
wow.
The
Rick,
Nolan line one.
Yes.
Baker Mayfield. Why would people even suggest that with a structured system
It's
that
crazy.
it would be bad for him?
I'm not sure. I think their image of Baker was the last one they had of him last year when he was losing, and just sort of scrambling around. This year, I think his offensive line has improved. He should feel a little bit more comfortable in the pocket now that he has an extra tight end to help him out. Supposedly his receivers are healthy, and I think his offensive line has improved, which may give him some more confidence. And probably more important than anything, we've got a head coach that actually knows plays beyond number 15. Freddie would have the first 15 down, and after that it was like, anybody got a coin we can flip?
Huh?
Stefanski, I think, actually has a game plan that'll continue right throughout the entire game, which should give Baker some confidence as to what he has to do out there to get us to having a successful season.
Well, and keeping the Browns in mind here, Jarvis Landry, who wasn't going to get surgery, then did get surgery, and he's now rehabbing. He's a little ahead of schedule, but he's being intelligent, saying that he's really gonna be smart about his return. They've said August, but he's not going to be doing very much in August. He may start out doing some light things, but beyond that, the bottom line is finding out how badly hurt he was last year was just another nail in the coffin of that whole coaching staff. Playing people, and it was no wonder. I mean, we look back at it now, we couldn't understand why our top players weren't getting reps in the new system. And the reason was they were injured and they weren't even going to be allowed to participate in practices. How much better will the Cleveland Browns be, assuming that OBJ is healed and Jarvis Landry is healed, and they'll actually be able to work with the coach and understand the system they're playing in? I mean, this whole thing is so remedial to me.
Huh. Yeah,
absolutely. But I can say this, anything's possible with the Cleveland Browns. You can end up with a defense that doesn't stop anybody, and you could end up with shootouts every week, and it could be very frustrating losing high-scoring games. You could have injury issues, which can hit virtually any team at any time. I mean, nothing's an assurance, but I mean, if you had to say, all right, this is like a stock and you're going to invest in a stock, I would invest in Baker Mayfield, and I would invest in the Cleveland Browns, knowing that they're going to be better than 7-9 with the fourth easiest schedule out there and with real people at the helm. And, and none of this has anything to do with analytics. None of this has anything to do with, the people we've selected in the draft. It's all well and good. You're going to make decisions on them based upon their capabilities as the season unwinds. But having, a coach who takes his job seriously and is detail oriented. Now, he may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer. I don't know Kevin Stefanski, but I know this, that there's more thought put into what he's doing than Freddie Kitchens ever put into anything except catfish fishing.
Yeah.
Well, you guys watched the Building the Browns episodes, the past 4 that have been out. They actually make Stefanski look like an adult and somebody that can do a PowerPoint presentation, which is something that I don't think Freddie Kitchens could do either one of those. So at least he's got that going for him. So I
And
think he's, you know,
it's getting players to buy in. I mean, the
Correct.
thing is, Freddie Kitchens, it wasn't that they bought into his system. They bought into his laissez-faire, not demanding anything of them, and then having to put up with the other side of the coin, which was, you know, being in the coach's doghouse. It was a clusterfuck is what it was. And this
well,
is all,
the top tier players obviously weren't being demanded of anything, but what about the Rashard Higginses and the, you know, of the world that got put in the doghouse? You know, I think there was like mixed treatment for different players, and when you have that to such an extent like you had last year, you're going to get dissension on the team, aren't you?
you know, I've always said that, you know, there are players who are really valuable players as long as they are fitting in the way they should fit in, like a Delonte West. So Delonte West isn't supposed to be jacking up 20 shots a night, you know?
That's
That-
right.
You know, the Cavaliers brought him in to be a hard-nosed defensive guy and to be a mismatch down low because he was a beast, and physically he could eat minutes up because he was in great physical condition. But you play him where he is of the most value. And Rashard Higgins, I can't tell you. I don't think that he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I think he's better than just a blind draft pick. I think he's better than the Michigan guy we drafted.
Yeah, I would say he's ahead of Peoples Jones. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean, so give him an opportunity to play, and he will be inserted when he can make a difference for this team if the coach knows what he's doing. And I think that's the whole trick, is you get the players to understand where they fit in and how they have to participate and contribute. And that was just never happening. It was a fight. OBJ and Jarvis Landry wanting the ball all the time. And then the fight between, you know, establishing a running game and Freddie Kitchens and his propensity for calling trick plays, all of that horse shit. And go ahead.
I wanted to ask you guys a question. This is for the panel. Do you think with the Freddie Kitchens, him being on a short leash and everything, only being 1 year in his tender, does that put the pressure on Stefanski to have to perform this year? Like, do you think the Browns organization and the fans will have patience for a year or two? Or do you think that they say, no, we want, because it sounds like the expectations for him is to perform at a high level, which obviously whatever coach you bring in or regime you bring in, that's what you expect. But also when you bring a head coach in, sometimes it could take years to build to the point to where you want to get him to. So are you guys expecting him within the first year to make the playoffs or to win the division, or?
No, but I
What's your room
think
for optimism?
I think the answer, at least from my perspective, and everyone else will have a chance to answer this one. From my perspective, I don't really worry about down the road. Things were so disorganized and discombobulated last year that I think it's the perfect, if it's the perfect opportunity for Baker Mayfield to look good, it's the perfect opportunity for Kevin Stefanski to look good, just because he's organized, he has his shit together, and he has a plan. The guy before him didn't have a plan, and it was obvious. So it was all like watching an improvisational comedy sketch gone wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just all being made up as it went along, and it wasn't in a good way. So,
Okay.
And
I guess-
especially when Freddie would go off script with the plays, because he would pick plays that they had never run in practice.
right.
That was
okay,
the biggest complaint.
I guess my question is, and I should have reiterated it this way, I'll keep it short and simple. Is the bar for Stefanski set high? And is the pressure more on Stefanski to perform in his first year, or is it more on Baker Mayfield's third year?
I don't think that there should be pressure on Stefanski because he's following a bumbling idiot into the job. I mean, no, I'm being serious. I mean, if you can't do any better than that, then you have a real problem on your hands. But I can't imagine that it wouldn't be better and more organized and more relatable as far as the players were concerned.
Just like last year, game one will be the tell-all about where this team is. even if they lose a very competitive game,
But ready to play,
Yeah.
right?
Not like
Yeah.
last year against the Titans when you just blew up right in front of your eyes.
Well, yeah, and by week 4 it was all over. But this time, yeah, sure, the Ravens game away first week of the season is important, but the next games, which are the Bengals and Redskins at home, and then the Cowboys away, if we don't know whether Stefanski is capable of being an NFL coach by October 4th after we play the Cowboys, then we're gonna know pretty fucking quickly whether
Yeah, I'd say
I
if
mean,
they're not 2-1 by week 4, then you've got some problems on
two,
your
two,
hands.
and two,
Well,
and three,
and then
one.
there's
Yeah.
the other thing that is this complaining that we saw about, oh, we can't play our players in the preseason too much. And we come out ill prepared. I don't think Stefanski's going to have any of that shit. I really don't believe that. I mean, you guys were hurt coming in before
Well,
anything
the
even
preseason
happened.
may even be all non-contact to a lot of extent if this virus.
There
is
might not
still
even
an
be a
issue.
preseason.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Players
So,
play at
It
half
would
speed
probably be
anyway.
less than 4 games.
Players play at half speed anyway, so during preseason. So
How
they may
prepared you
just have
are is
scrimmages.
how you communicate with the players and get them to learn the playbook. I mean, it's real simple stuff, but I don't think the bar should be set high for Stefanski. I think just the opposite. I think a guy who's confident in his system is giving everybody a rope to hold on to. He's taking David Njoku and he's taking Hollywood Higgins and saying, hey, look, this is your opportunity to prove you belong in this league. We're not going by what the previous regime said. We're doing this, from the beginning.
yeah,
And the same thing is going to be said to the running backs. It's going to be
I
like,
just-
well, to kind of play off of that, I'm watching all of the work from home videos, and when they did Sione Takitaki, he was talking about how much easier it was for him to pick up the defense doing it this way because of how much he can study the actual film individually, and it was easier for him. It's been easier for him to understand the concepts rather than be locked in a room with 20 guys and trying to figure out what the hell he's supposed to do.
anybody else have a feeling about this on the panel as far as the expectations of Stefanski?
Well-
go ahead.
Bronk, you go first, Bronk,
Yeah.
and
Anyway,
then Rick.
who sets this fucking bar anyway that we're talking about? This bar, is it the national media that sets this bar? Is it us, the actual fans?
I think
of
the
actual
fans.
team?
I think the fans who are really impatient have a tendency
yeah.
because it drives this perpetual changeover in regimes, and I think unfortunately it's kind of like 52 pickup.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I
and
mean,
there are some national fanboys like Burleson and what the hell is the other guy's name? Chris something.
Carter?
No, on NFL Network.
Yeah.
Oh,
oh yeah, I can't think of his name.
Okay, well, the goofy guy. Anyway,
that doesn't
so
narrow it down.
they're-
on NFL Network.
It's half
they
the-
always are rooting for the Browns to actually do something, and so that gets kind of spread around a lot too. So
Well,
Yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
again,
the
but
bar
we-
is bullshit.
well, the bar is only, you're only as good as the last thing you said, right? And I mean,
Correct.
right now, the Cleveland Browns are only as good as what they were last year under Freddie Kitchens. The year before that, they were as good as what they appeared to be the first
Yeah.
year under Freddie Kitchens. So that's the way it works. Rick, you see it any differently?
No, they just need to, as a team with with the front office, the coaching staff, and everything, they just need to be pulling in the same direction. It just seemed like in the past, it's always, some of them were trying to go that way and some of them were trying to go that way and nothing got accomplished. We'll all just get on the same page and get going in the same direction. That could be the start of something very nice.
Yeah. Tony, you have anything to add to this?
I've already stated what I really think on the whole
All right.
situation, Joe.
Yeah, there was a headline that really, because we got no sports. Will the Cleveland Indians extend the contracts of Shane Bieber and Mike Clevenger? I mean, like, why in the fuck wouldn't they? I mean, we have no hitting.
Well,
Why would we proceed to get rid of the only two pitchers? I mean, right now, I mean, you know. I mean, Carlos Carrasco ain't getting anywhere near baseball coming off of leukemia. As we would say, versteh, understand. He is a high, yeah, right.
Don't get
He is a high risk guy. So yeah, you damn well better get Shane Bieber and Mike Clevenger signed up. I mean, it's just the Indians have always put their shingle out, not for offense, but for pitching. And we know that, Lindor is not going to be around for long. So you got to have people who are keeping the score low. It's not a great way of winning, not a fun way of watching the game. But if they're so bad that they're cutting into muscle, as opposed to fat, and they're reducing salaries at the expense of their pitching core, they're not going to win. Yeah, Bronk.
What's the because I live in a cave. What's the latest news on the MLB? Is there actually going to be a
I was just about
season?
to ask that.
What's going on? Anyone know?
Well,
Because I don't.
been reading about what they're suggesting, and they were suggesting July,
Really?
and that was the last specific, period that they were talking about. But I don't know if everybody, I just read things out of the corner of my eye. And the EuroLeague basketball started up and then shut it down because of a resurgence in coronavirus. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the worst possible scenario. Big money sports. If you pull the trigger to get the season started and then you have to pull back because you precipitated, that's not a good thing. So,
yeah, that almost makes it seem like it's almost a cancellation.
I don't know. It's weird though, because Bronk, you would know, and this is right up your alley. Bundesliga soccer seems to be going great without fans.
Yeah, I mean,
Only been on 2 weeks though. Granted,
yeah, there's been a couple Premier League players, couple players here that have tested positive. So 2 or 3 on a few teams.
Yeah,
they're trying to come. They're in training. They're trying to come back. So we're further down the line than America is as far as this infection goes. We're probably, Europe and England are probably 3 weeks ahead of you. So whatever we do, you should do 3 weeks after we do it. But that's not how it's going to work out. It'll work out however it does. Because there's different political things going on, which we won't talk about. But that's sort of my feeling. And these leagues are going to be safe because they don't want the liability. If a player, catches this and dies, who's going to pay for the wreckage of that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It will be odd to watch any sport without fans being there. And what was the last thing I heard is that the NBA was talking about finishing the season in Disney
give it
World.
up, man.
Yeah,
what a Mickey Mouse solution.
Yeah, they're going to go to Orlando, and that they're going to play a 30-team playoff tournament when the season's over.
and then
What do you think of that, Rob?
I saw some leagues that I saw the NBA. I saw some reports that the NBA would, if you're not, mathematically eligible for the playoffs, you wouldn't even be bothered. And because
it makes no sense for the Hornets who are 23-42 or the Suns who are 26-39 to play and then you risk your players getting hurt going in the next season you're not even making the dance anyway. So that's why they're saying they may propose a 30-team playoff and then have the summer league 1-game play-ins to narrow the teams down to the Sweet 16. That's what I heard.
Rocks, I mean, Disney World.
Wow.
Mickey Mouse play after all.
I tell you, it does get aggravating, folks, to have to hear that voice. It's just.
It's better than Timmy Bartholow. Come on, and Bill Masterson.
Anything's
both of
better
them.
than Bill Masterson that goes
Masterson,
on forever. And
absolutely.
Timmy Bartholow, I pretty well stopped doing Timmy Bartholow.
Yeah,
Because,
he's universally hated. Does anybody like Timmy Bartholow? Anyone?
I don't believe
Speak up
Rox
now.
does.
See, no.
I mean,
That's
my
Roxas Titanium.
no, I mean, my back condition doesn't allow me to do Timmy Bartholow anymore. Because
Oh.
of breathing issues,
my
I
God.
can't do that anymore. So
Wow.
that's why you haven't heard him.
Holy shit. Oh my God. There's a
Hey,
video
Steven!
on.
Hey, Steven! Does the spoon stick in your ass as easily as your mouth?
Okay.
Wow. Does he know he's been
That's a
on
good
full
one.
screen this entire show? That he's been here.
Yeah.
My
Probably
God,
not.
it's like all hands
Not on
on deck.
YouTube.
Hey, Mr. Moo, it doesn't even make sense to finish NBA season because honestly, I don't feel like there's
No,
going to be a true champion at this point.
I don't
At the end of this
care.
season.
I
Well,
mean,
if they have a playoff, let it be like a cup competition, and it'd be a special trophy that they just make up for 2019.
you know, and
Yeah.
if LeBron ends up winning the goddamn thing, the Jordan fans are like, oh, it doesn't count anyway, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I
no
mean,
one-
there's nobody going to win from this scenario.
Yeah, they
Nobody
already
will-
said that if LeBron wins, it doesn't count. Like they were already
Yeah,
saying that on
exactly.
ESPN.
Just give them all a participation certificate. Thanks
Man,
for
let 'em
playing.
go
See you
home.
next year.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah,
tune in
let-
next month.
Get those little plastic trophies like in Little League, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think
Meanwhile,
anybody
some
really.
8-year-old soccer girl at home crying because they took her trophy away. Give it to
Oh,
that
and-
big guy, LeBron.
Georgetown, the basketball coach Patrick Ewing, the Patrick Ewing, is now out of the hospital after his coronavirus diagnosis.
Glad he made it.
He still couldn't spell coronavirus, but he's out of the hospital. A good thing. The other thing is what I call blatant opportunism. Did anybody watch the golf match yesterday?
I heard about
No.
it.
Watched
Watched
a
a
little of it.
little.
Yeah.
I mean, I missed it. I mean, it
Yeah,
was like,
why not? The only person I remotely have any time for is Tiger Woods. The other three assholes I have no time for whatsoever. So there you go.
no, and not only that, but I mean, what are we going to get? Peyton Manning waving his dick in front of a female trainer, or what are we going to get? People running out and blowing Tom Brady in the middle of the
Did they
fairway.
check Tom Brady's golf ball to see whether it was properly inflated? Or not?
Inflated or not? Yeah.
Fucking hell. They're just assholes. I have no time for these dickheads.
But the epitome of this is you see Michael Jordan getting attention, so we have to have Lance Armstrong, don't we?
You know,
Oh, dear God.
Oh
No, we
God,
don't.
yeah.
And you know something? So what comes out of the revelation? His stepfather beat him with a fraternity paddle as a child.
wow, he sounds like Niedermeyer. Thank you, sir. Can I have another?
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Whack.
Look, he looks like Kevin Bacon. Wow.
Hey, Mr. Moohead, I heard
Man,
Horace
come
Grant was
on.
talking shit to Michael Jordan.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's so old. It's like no, it's like being in a fucking time warp. And Lance Armstrong. I mean, what in the hell? I mean, what? Let's say his stepfather beat him with a fraternity paddle. You know, his father was a proud standing member of Eat a Pizza Pie. You know what's it matter? What happened? A fucking fraternity paddle that made him dope. He's just one of hundreds of cyclists who
Oh,
doped.
God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
Every
joke.
day. That's a shit sport for that.
Lance Armstrong is to riding what Roger Clemens is to baseball. And, you know, will do anything to try to re-illuminate the luster on a fated and ill-fated career. And Lance Armstrong will do anything to try to rebuild his legacy. And you know something? I don't give a flying fuck about Lance Armstrong. If a goddamn dump truck hit him, I don't give a shit. If he got paddled by his father, I don't give a shit. I don't care. It has nothing to do with doping and cheating to win a sporting event. There's no crying in baseball.
I care more about Sheryl Crow than I do Lance Armstrong. So There you go.
And you know, I was, you know, kind of concerned when she was leaving Las Vegas, but she got to where she was going to very
Yeah,
safely,
eventually.
which was kind of nice.
Yeah, it made her happy.
And if it makes her happy,
Yeah.
it
Can't be that bad.
Thank you.
And she went out and soaked in the sun. There you go. Happy
Oh,
ending.
geez, we're gonna
Wow.
We're
I
rolling
know.
out the top 10 here of
Yeah, the first cut's always the deepest.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I don't think there were 10 for Cheryl
Well,
Crow.
let's see.
Well, now
Favorite
we know what she meant by leaving Las Vegas.
There you go. My favorite mistake.
She took your picture today, sat
Yeah.
down and cried.
Yeah. Well,
Jeez.
once you found out it was Kid Rock, you probably
Yeah.
cried too. I'd weep all day. Jesus.
Especially compared to Lance Armstrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Poor guy
two
had
different
testicular
people.
cancer. That took
Damn
a
it!
toll.
I could have had $30 million.
Wow.
Instead, I got jack shit.
And here's something, a voice that I can do. I mean, a headline: Mike Tyson to get $20 million plus contract offer from Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. I'm sorry, I have to wear gloves. I have to wear gloves. There's no way I'm doing the John L. Sullivan thing.
Well, I heard he's going to fight Holyfield again.
Oh, for God's
As
What?
Holyfield, he went, what?
Is that like the battle of his next year, you know?
I mean, you know what's remarkable? I'm convinced that people either have bloodthirst or they just all have dementia. I mean,
it's both.
This is not the return of the conquering hero. Mike Tyson he lost his last fight to
Something Williams. I
Lennox
forgot his
Lewis?
name. Not something
Kevin
Williams.
fucking McBride.
Oh.
Kevin fucking McBride. Do you know? I mean, honestly,
That sounds like an offensive tackle for the Broncos, you know?
Kevin McBride was a horrible
How
fighter.
bad was he? How bad was he?
I mean,
Well, apparently his middle name being fucking is pretty bad, I'd say.
yeah, I mean,
Kevin F. McBride.
horrible. And so this
That's
is
how the
not
ref
a guy
introduced him.
who went out at the top of his game. This is a guy who, you know, was easily figured out and was quite one-dimensional as a fighter and was not evasive defensively, didn't take a particularly good punch, wore down over time, and honestly was not a very big man by today's standards.
No.
I mean, so,
No.
I mean, and he's 53 years old. It must be bloodthirst or people have dementia. It's a crazy thing.
If he
His
fights
training
again.
video, he looks pretty good though. Like he looks healthy for his age.
You know
Yeah,
something. You know something.
Wait till you get to be 50. If you do.
Anyone can look good hitting gloved hands, you know, without anybody throwing anything back. Of course, his hands look like they're moving quickly, but you see, the problem is the evasiveness. It's the ability not just to throw punches in combination quickly. It's the ability to throw those combinations at the right instant, get in, get out. I mean, a guy like Joe Frazier, you know, it was all about him working his way inside to throw that left hook, and he would absorb punishment to do that. But he would get that punch off. A guy like Tyson, you know, the fast rapid fire combinations that Teddy Atlas taught him numerically, they were a lot of double left hands, like left hand to the body, left hand uppercut. There were a lot of unusual combinations that took an incredible amount of timing and reflexes. And you get in with short arms to hit those kinds of bombs. But if you stay at the dance too long, you're going to get hurt really bad, especially with the size men we're talking about today. You know, and just one little 16-second video of him punching things, you know, and yeah, his body doesn't look bad for a 53-year-old man, but that's not what you fight with.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen so many fighters who are just absolutely shot just because their reflexes are absolutely gone.
Well, didn't George Foreman come back after he had a long leave of absence after he retired?
No, George Foreman, as far as I was concerned, they screwed him against the dead guy, Tommy the Duke Morrison. And they took the title away from him. And there was nothing forthcoming because they were done with him. No, he had talked about fighting, and when he was in his 50s, he was going to do it again, but he never did. The fact is that he got out with all of his marbles, which is what you're supposed to do. But Mike Tyson, I don't know if I had all my marbles to begin with.
That's Elmer Fudd. That is seriously.
No, I have had this conversation before, and I will again. Mike Tyson is up here, and he lisps.
Yeah.
Elmer Fudd.
I'm playing Holyfield.
Very flat. Yeah, so there's a big difference, and
Well, for shits and giggles, I hope Tyson gets his W against Holyfield since he dropped the first two.
What I think is that not only Tyson, but all the people who Holyfield owes money to, including the women who he stuck pregnant and left without paying for the kids, they should all get, they should be holding 2x4s and getting clean shots on Evander while Tyson is trying to defeat him. So
Maybe we can go to Tyson and ask about that fraternity paddle or something.
Instead of a spit bucket, they're just gonna fucking keep dipping his gloves in soy sauce in hopes that he actually eats.
If they shut Tyson down in Waterloo, Iowa, they should just shut Tyson down in boxing. Enough. Wow. I mean, if there isn't enough interest really in Anthony Joshua and
it tastes like chicken.
Yeah. Why am I blanking on the guy with the big right hand?
Oh God.
Fucking Tyson Fury.
Tyson Fury, yeah.
Well, no. I mean,
the other guy,
what he beat, Deontay Wilder.
Deontay Wilder, yeah.
If these guys can't bring enough interest to the sport,
if you can't remember Deontay Wilder, then there isn't enough interest in the sport. You proved your point.
If Tyson Fury can beat you, I rest my case. Tyson Fury not even a good fighter.
It's just a punk.
If they have to come into the ring with a sticker on their chest that says "Hello, my name is," well, then we got a problem,
Yeah, so people are only interested in sitting there and looking at old fighters coming back. It's definitely a problem. I wanted to. Nah, I'm not going to do that this time, because I didn't want to do any pandemic talk at all, so I'm not going to.
Save it for Friday.
On a future show, I wanted to share some of the names of famous people who passed away from the disease.
Oh, where's the BCOD during all this? Isn't he? Is he out like wreaking havoc or something? Is he done?
No, he's always right here by my side. And the fact of the matter is, you know what's the sad thing? Yeah, I'll go full screen. You know what the problem is here? Why am I getting him on full screen?
I don't know.
You've been having Steven on full screen the entire
we've had him on full screen now for quite some time.
Not on YouTube.
No.
Only for the panelists, but you could have changed your views.
Pictures been around on my screen here like he's in a ride at Cedar Point or something, for God's sake.
Well, how do I?
The fucking tilt-a-whirl here.
I'd be car sick after all he ate.
There. Okay. So
hey,
BCOD.
The problem here is a lot of people saying that the virus has put people out of work, but none more so than this guy here.
Exactly.
I mean, he's just been literally devastated because 100,000 Americans dead. He can't keep up with it all. So
He's lost his job, really. He's now been made, he's been furloughed, the BCOD.
Bullshit. He's
Outsourced.
behind the virus. You know that damn
You
well.
think
He's out. He's been outsourced.
Yeah, I mean, that's really kind of a sad thing for an evil piece of vinyl. That's it for this edition of Moohead Radio. Kept our promise. All sports, that's the way it's going to remain. I don't want to talk anymore about the pandemic. I hope everybody stays safe, healthy. Do what you feel you want to do, man. And don't come crying to me one way or the other, because this is the way it is. And as far as sports are concerned, you can bet on one thing. We're here to talk about it, and it may take a while for it to get started, but we're not going anywhere. So, you know, and look, if Bronk and I mean, you can see the Bronk. How much weight have you lost, Bronk?
Oh, at least 10 pounds since March.
Yeah, I mean, and is that are you like me on the pain diet?
It's post surgery and pre surgery.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues going on.
Yeah, and I'm on the pain diet, which is really great. You know, I will talk to you offline though, Bronk, because I do want to talk to you, because I had a horrible thing happen in the swimming pool the other day that was a direct result of my C5, C6, and I do want to talk to you about, because I have so that everyone
understands. We talk about whenever.
Yeah, but it's, and maybe you know more about this, Bronk, and you can help research it too, because you've personally gone through this. I have a bone spur and a disc, and it's both encroaching on my spinal cord. So
encroaching or actually in your spinal cord?
It is touching. It is contacting the spinal cord.
Okay. Well,
and if
digging in, then that's a real problem.
Yeah, and what I did was I did a certain motion, and I go into cervical vertigo.
Wow.
It's really bizarre, but yeah. So hey, but it makes you eat a whole lot less, and so
stay positive.
I just keep smiling, man. And as the weight drops, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I look a little more human. And then I look at somebody like Steven and I go, God, what a sick fucker. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio.
That happy note.
We will be back again on Friday, so join us then. And until next time, hasta la vista, pasture heads. Good night.